Begin the current Daf, Kesuvos Daf, Tzadi Aleph. We begin on the bottom of Tzadi and Beis, 6 lines up on the bottom of the Yomid. But the Gemara continues the discussion with the previous Daf, which we were discussing this interesting case of the opening Mishnah regarding if Noses Rishon B'Meisa, he married the first wife, she died, was called Achas B'Chayiv. One died when he was alive. Then Noses Shni B'Meisu, then he married the second wife and he died, and then she died. That's called Achas B'Meisoi, so one after he had already died. So the Mishnah said, Shni b'Yershei Koyim l'Yershu Shayna. The second one, and her Yershin come before the Yershin of the first one, which the Gemara made a diuk, that yes, the sons of the second one come before the sons of the first one, but sounds like if there is money left over, the first ones will get their mother's ksuba, which is called ksubas b'din nichrin. So you see that achas b'chayim, achas b'maisai, that you will get the, at least that was the Gemara assumed. It was a shayla. The Gemara said maybe it's not a raya. That was the discussion that came up. Do we say achas b'chayim, achas b'maisai, that the first ones will still get the ksubas b'din nichrin or not? That's how Gemara continues with showing another machlekes tanoim, as we had just finished off, showing a machlekes tanoim in this halach of achas b'chayim, achas b'maisai. Sure, it goes by the chazak, the appreciate enjoying this for today's daf. Some of those we discuss in today's daf are, as we'll see, we'll start off with a machlekes tanoim of Shimon regarding this halach of ksubas b'din nichrin in the case of achas b'chayim, achas b'maisai. The halach of maisa dinner, like we said, the Chum only initiated ksubas b'din nichrin when there is a maisa dinner because we didn't want l'mek or nefla. The rest want to uproot the biblical nafla. Did not initiate ksubas when there is not a maisa dinner because that would be in mak and nefla. Because if you're getting your mother ksubah, you're getting mother ksubah. So and that's rabbinic. That means biblically we're not doing any division of the Yerusha. Somebody is discussing today's daf about the halach of Shimon Bezdin, that property is being evaluated in court to evaluate if there is a maisa dinner or not. The case of Meruba ben Nismatu, which is, let's say there actually was when the father died, it was enough to do a biblical, but then it diminished that by the time they come in to do it, there isn't enough, or the other way, let's say there wasn't enough, and then by the time they came to do it, there was enough. Question is, when do we define the moment to say, is there a Yerusha Deraisa or not? Also the question of Tir for Bekama Kasvinan, regarding when there is this collection, how much do we write? At what point do we define it regarding what the collection, or actually we'll see, it's regarding collection in general, how do we define it? So in the previous daf, we were discussing this halach of achas v'chayim achas b'maisai. The first wife died while he was alive, the second one died after he died. So we had a machlekes regarding, do we say you get ksubas b'din nichrin or not? That's how Gemara continues. 6 lines up in the bottom of the Tzadi and Beis, says Gemara, v'hani tanai, ki hani tanai. The following Tanam we're going to quote is like the Tanam we just brought of Rabbi Kiva and the Tanakama. If we say achas b'chayim achas b'maisai ksubas b'din nichrin or not, I'll show you another machlekes Tanam the same way. The Tanam learned the Bryce. Nasa eser rishayna v'meisa. If he married the first one and she died. Same case as Mishnah. Nasa is a shnia v'meisu. Then he married the second one, he died. So says the Brisa, the Tanakama says, Boin b'nei shalzu, the sons of this one come, which the assumption of the Gemara is originally that this is going in the sons of the second one. Which it sounds like the Brisa is saying, the sons of the second one, which she's the Balas Chayiv, they come la'achar misa, after the mother's death, and they take their mother's ksuba, but the sons of the first one, they wouldn't get a ksuba. Why? Because this is achas b'chayim achas b'maisai, which they don't have. Which Shimon, he says, well, it depends. If there is, which in general a rule in ksubas b'din nichrin, if there's an extra dinner afterward, then actually then actually they will take ksubas b'din nichrin, even though it's achas b'chayim achas b'maisai. Then not, if not, then you're right. You divide it equally. Whatever's left over on the, as Rashi points out, importantly, after the chayv of the second one's ksuba, she obviously does get it. She's a creditor, but whatever's left after, then the first one they're not going to get it because there's no moisture there. Says the Gemara, I love, isn't it? This is exactly what they're disagreeing about. The Marsa of Rabbi Shimon ha'od achas v'chayis v'achas b'maisai yeshling ksubas b'din nichrin. That's why, as long as there's moisture dinner, then the sons of the first one are going to get it. They don't get it. That's what Tanakama said, that only the sons of the second one come and take their mother's ksuba. Says Gemara, not necessarily. The Kulam, I can tell you that according to everyone, even Tanakama would agree that the sons of the first one would get ksubas b'din nichrin. So why is the Tanakama, which obviously sounds like a disagreement with Rabbi Shimon saying, if there's moisture dinner, then they'll take the mother ksuba. But the Tanakama made it sound like that only the sons of the second one take. Says Gemara is a tin tab of Tzadi Av Ben Aleph. Oh, because here I'll tell you why. Because Vahacha will be here bedina mekarkoi k'mefagi. they're disagreeing about a different point. Do you need that extra dinner that's beyond what each one's collecting their ksubas? That there should be 2 ksubas and a dinner of karka? And over here, the extra dinner is only metaltalin. Oh, that's the machlekes. Marsa v'tanakama held mekarkoi in. As we know, for collections, oftentimes, like by ksubas, Yerusha, you need to have for karka, metaltalai. But metaltalin, that's not going to be sufficient. And that's why the Tanakama says that the sons of the first ones don't take. Even mobile items. And that's what Shimon comes to say, since his words are, since there's a Maisa dinner, what does he mean? Everyone agrees that's a Maisa dinner. No, Maisa dinner koldu, any extra dinner, even that of Metalin, that they're going to take. That's what the Gemara tries saying. The Gemara says, can you really say that according to Rabbi Shimon, that he's the one that's saying even the Maisa dinner is Metalin, that's going to be effective? But if it's not, the next Mishnah, as we'll see later on, this Amid says, Shimon, he says, even if there are properties that are left over that, however, there's no responsibility on them, meaning that's a code word for metalman, einon klum, that's not sufficient, until there's actual properties that there's a lien on, meaning that you could collect from that's always a karka, yes, I'll make ksubas dinner, that's more than the 2 ksubas, at least the worth of a dinner, then they can collect ksubas b'din. So you see explicitly, Reb Shimon holds, metalman doesn't work. So how can you tell me that the Tanakh says it doesn't work because it's only metalman? Reb Shimon holds it's going to work because it's metalman. We see explicitly Reb Shimon holds metalman doesn't work. Eli rather says the Gemara, you're right, a different shot. We're discussing if the dinner that's extra is meshubed, there's a lien on it to someone else. That's the machlekes. That it's only if there's available properties that they're actually dividing, that then you're going to have the ksubas bin nichur. But if the extra dinner that there is beyond the 2 ksubas is meshubed to someone else, that's not going to work. That's a Tanakh holds. But a Marsa, Rabbi Shimon held that a fila mishabdi, that a chayiv, as we discussed on the previous Daf, is also a meiser. Because meiser is the Yerusha. Now they'll pay up the father's chayv. That is going to be considered for meiser. That's what they're disagreeing about. But again, everyone holds after the chayv, after the meiser. It does work. So then says the Gemara, if that's the case, since you're telling me that there is a meiser dinner, it's just meshubah to someone else, and therefore comes that Rabbi Shimon is the more lenient interpretation. He's saying even if it's meshubah, it's going to work. So then Rabbi Shimon Omer, im yesha meiser dinner. Why is Rabbi Shimon saying if there's a meiser dinner, then I will say shubas b'din dicher? Sounds like he's being more machmer than the Tanakh, because what it should have said is, since you're telling me he's the more lenient interpretation, it should have said, oh, even dinner, since there is an extra of a dinner, even though it's meshubed, still everyone's going to take the ksubas b'din dichron. That's what it should have said. His wording sounds like he's being mach, but you're telling me he's being mekel. So the Gemara comes out a different shot. That actually, the pachas medidik mefli. The machlekes is regarding if there's less than a dinner left over. Marsa b'Tanakh held dinner in. It's only if there's a dinner, pachas medina light, less than dinner not. Marsa but Reb Shimon held that no, I feel the pachas medina even less than a dinner. So I think, how could you say that? But Reb Shimon dinner coming. His words explicit in the Mishnah are im yesham ma'isa dinner. How can you tell me that he's saying even if less than a dinner? So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me, okay, you're right. You have to really invert the opinions. You're going to tell me that the interpretation that we explained in the Machlekes and the Braisa, just flip it around. Meaning, when the Tanakh said, Boin b'ner shel zu, not like we explained up until now. Up until this point, we thought, when the Tanakh said, Boin b'ner shel zu, it meant the sons of the second one. That, they take the mother's suba, but the sons of the first one don't take. And Shimon saying, no, the sons of the first one will take. No, say it the other way around. When Tanakh says, Boin b'ner shel zu, it means the sons of the first one. And the Tanakh was saying that they take their mother's kesuba. They'll take kesuvos b'din dicher. And now Rabbi Shimon is coming to say, no. If yesham ma'isa dinner shalei, then nightman. But if not, in other words, if let's say there's only less than a dinner, then they're going to have to equally divide and they will not take it. If that's how you want to interpret it, that's difficult. Why is that difficult? Because Tanakh de Masnitin, Tanakh of our Mishnah, the Rabbi Shimon says on them in the coming Mishnah, his words are Shimon says in the next Mishnah, a few lines down, he says, no, even if there's a Maisa dinner, but it's metaltlin, he says, inikum, it's nothing. Now, the Tanakama of that Mishnah, nami dinner kama, because the words of the Mishnah are, Haysham Yesed dinner, etc. And then Shimon says, wait a second, Tanakama. Even though there's a dinner more, gotta make sure it's karka, not metaltlin. But as Rashi points out, Tanakama of the Mishnah is the Tanakama of the Brisa. So how could you tell me that you want to flip it around now and tell me that the one who's holding less than the dinner that works is the Tanakama? If Shimon holds it has to be dinner, he's the machmer. And when it says bon ben shuzu, it's actually not the sons of the second one, it's actually the sons of the first one that they do take according to Tanakama. But you can't say that because look at our next Mishnah. Our next Mishnah says even Tanakama holds has to be a dinner. So the other way that says, okay, close, but not there. Now we'll explain. Meaning, kihanach teilishne kamoy. Rather you have to say like the first two versions we said. Meaning that the machlekes of Shimon Tanakama, meaning yes, everyone holds achas b'chayim and achas b'maisa will work. So why is there a machlekes? The machlekes is regarding if that extra dinner is karka. Does it have to be karka or is it enough metaltlin? Or what's if it's meshubit? And the epuch and switch around the answer. And explain that the Tanakama was the one who was saying boing benel shalzu means benel of the first one. They also will take the mother's ksuba because of benen dichrin. And even though there's only a meiser of dinner that's metaltlin or meshubit, that's going to work. Shimon was, yes, he was being machmer, and he was saying that no, only if that meiser dinner is karka and b'nei chari, not meshubit, then they'll take. So that's Narab Shimon is the more stringent opinion. And if you can't ask anymore, oh, it should have said ho'vi yeshem meiser dinner. The words im sounds like as a chumrah. Yes, Rabbi Shimon is the more machmer of the two opinions. That is how we could explain the machlekes, not necessarily a machlekes that we thought as we started off the daf. Hanetanoi, machlekes in achas v'chayim, achas v'maisei. You could say everyone agrees that it does work, but the machlekes was regarding the maisei dinner. Does it have to be karka? Could it be metaltlin? Also, does it have to be nechar? It could even be mishubal. Now the Gemara concludes this discussion by saying the halacha mazurch mishmei d'apafet. He says hilchasa, which are two out of the three shema minaz. I just called it shema minaz because that's how the Gemara started off the discussion. 3 pointers we were saying about the laws of within Dichron. Regarding the first two, the Papa rules that first of all, achas v'chayv achas b'maisei, regarding the halacha of if one of them died in his lifetime, which is within Dichron, and one of them died after he died, which is not within Dichron, regarding that ksuba, yes, the ksuba is within Dichron. One out of two will get again, which is not concerned for aslan tzuyeh. And the second is ksuba nasa moisel chaverta, that one woman's ksuba, the second one woman's ksuba, could be the extra that you need to have for the first one to collect their b'nen dichron. That's what he says. Now, the Gemara doesn't even like his wording. The Gemara says like this, Bish, let me ask me, look, I understand if you would have told me, achas b'chai v'achas b'maisa, around the first halacha, you would have told me, yesh l'en ksuba b'nen dichron. You would, let's even only tell me that halacha, that they get the ksuba of the male sons. And Malashman, you would not have told me the second halacha ksuba nas meiser that the second one's ksuba could be the meiser for the other ones. Okay, Havamina, I would have thought, and that's why I know why you had to tell me the second halacha also. Ika meiser dinner in. No, only if there's actual money left over, then yes, they'll get the b'nei Eloi, but if not, because you can't really make one woman's ksuba as like a meiser because, like we said, at least according to one opinion, it's not really meiser because the second one's not really paying up to themselves, really collecting. Okay, I would have understood why you had to tell me the second halacha too. But only tell me the second halacha and I would know the first one. Just tell me ksuba nas meiser chaverta. Tell me that the second one's ksuba will be the extra for the first one. I'm going to automatically know. And the Gemara, they're very into being concise and being brief. You don't have to tell me the first one. I would know mishum the achas b'chai v'achas b'maisai. I would know because in that case, yesh l'en ksuba b'nen dichron, they have ksuba b'nen dichron, as Rashi explains. Because if the case when the two women died in the lifetime of their husband, where both of them are coming from the halacha b'nen dichron, I would never be able to say that ksuba becomes a moisel chaverta because that's not pri chayiv. They're both coming from b'nen dichron. And if over here of achas b'chai v'achas b'maisai you don't need moiser, so where was that instituted? Obviously, I would know if you're telling me that the ksuba of the second one becomes moisel chaverta. Obviously, it's a case of achas b'chai v'achas b'maisai. So once you told me the second halacha, you don't have to tell me the first halacha. So it's a good question. The Gemara has an interesting answer. It says the Gemara, no. Yesh min halacha, had they only told you the second halacha, Havamina I would have thought to say, I would have thought, for example, if he married 3 wives, two of them died while he was alive. So he got married, his first wife died, he got married again, his second wife died, and then he finally died, and then the third wife died. Now, the case is specific over here. The third wife who died after him only was Yoledis Nekevi. He was already old, they only had one child, was a girl. Now, Bas Yerushi, that a girl, when there's children, is not someone that inherits. So what's the significance of that? Like Rashi explains, there's no concern, if you recall, the whole discussion of Achaz B'chai V'achaz B'moisa was based on Aslan Tsuye. They're going to come to fight. Because the sons of the second one, they're going to tell the sons of the first one, hey, wait a second. This is not fair that we get our mother Ksuba and you get your mother Ksuba. We're coming from a Chayim. You're going to take more from the Yerusha. In this case, there's no concern Lan Tsuye, because she doesn't have any rights in the Nechasim. All she gets is our mother's Ksuba. Now, the sons of the first ones that are males, and they're coming to Yarshin, they have that, let's say the Ksuba of one of their mothers was more than the other mothers. They're going to say, take your mother's Ksuba of Benin Dichrin, and we're going to take our mother's Ksuba, and there's no Moisa dinner. Well, that's not a problem, because between the two of us, we paid up the third Ksuba, which that girl, who, from her mother, the third wife, is a Meiser to the two that their mothers died when the husband was alive. Now, there's no dispute, because both of them are taking Kesuvos Benin Dichrin. And the third one that's taking as a chayv, which usually that's the one who has the problem with this. Say, what do you mean? We're taking as a chayv. Who are you to take as a Tachans Drabanan? She's not going to fight because she anyways doesn't Yarshin to say, hey, wait a second, you guys are taking more on the Yerusha than me. She doesn't take from the Yerusha. That's very interesting. So Al Achaz B'chai V'achaz B'moisa, but in the regular case of when two sons, meaning two wives, and one was B'chai V'achaz B'moisa. And the one that died after the husband died would be Yeled Zachahi, would be one that gave birth to a boy. Maybe I would say, no, we have to be concerned for fighting. Because the sons of the second one, that's the Baal Schleif, can say, hey, wait a second, why are you Yarshin Tati more than me? You're coming to take your mother's Ksuba more than on the division of the Yerusha. Me, I'm taking my mother's Ksuba. I'm not Yarshin this from Tati, because I'm getting from my mother. That's right to say the first halacha you would not have known from the second halacha because you would have said that would be aslan too. You would have interpreted the second halacha in the case of three wives, the third one being as a chayv, as a girl who will not have a problem of aslan too. The halacha, the next Mishnah, continue on this halacha of Kesuvos Benin Dichrin. Says the Mishnah, Misha Yonasu Shtei Nashim B'Nesu. If someone was married to two women and they died. And then he died, which this is the halacha, the classic situation that we were saying of Benin Dichrin, because he really yarshin his two wives. They died before him. But the Yisayim, the orphans are requesting their mother's ksuba. What does that mean? Well, anyway, when the father dies, they're going to yarshin him. No, the ksuba of one of the mothers is more than the other ones. So the sons want to say, we want to take our mother's ksuba, and you also, and then we'll divide our father's Yerusha, the rest. But we want to do Kesuvos Benin Dichrin because our mother was 10,000, your mother was only 5,000. Now, but says the Mishnah like this: if there's only enough money, the father died and he left over $10,000. One woman's ksuba was 8 and the other one was 2. Then chalkim b'shalom. They equally divide. Like all of the Yerushas, goes according to the amount of people that there are, and they don't get Kesuvos Benin Dichrin. Now, but dinner, if there was at least just one dinner extra, okay, then Eilan Kesuvos Iman, these will take their mother Ksuba, Velna Kesuvos Iman, and the other one will take their mother Ksuba. Now, interesting, says the Mishnah further, that the Yerushim are thinking. If the orphans, meaning, if let's say the father died, and there was $10,000, one of the Yerushim their ksuba was 8,000, the other one was 2,000. Oh, there's no extra. You don't get 8 and we get 2. We're going to equally divide 5 and 5. But let's say the older, the ones that have the bigger ksuba, they say like this: Anachnu alam al nichsei avinu. What we're going to do is we're going to inflate the value of our father's property, that it's going to be more, that when we're collecting, let's say the father's estate really is only worth 10. We'll inflate it to be worth 12. So when we're getting our 8, and you're going to get your 2, there's still going to be remaining 2,000 left. Yafa dinner. Let's say they'll only inflate a dinner's worth, more than what it's worth, so that there'll be a meiser dinner. We don't listen to them. We evaluate the nechasim, we assess it in the courts, and if the courts say this is what its value is and there's not a dinner more, they're not going to get it. Even though their mother choose a whopping amount more, again, we're not uprooting the biblical nachla because of the zakanas of the nechasim of the b'nin. Now, continues the Mishnah further. Let's say there were assets that was fit for their father to yarshin from the grandfather after their father passed away, meaning the father passed away before the grandfather passed away. Now, but they know the Zayd is gonna die at some point. And when the Zayd is gonna die, then their father's gonna technically inherit it. And then there's gonna be a Meiser dinner in the 2 Yerushas, says the Tanakama doesn't make a difference. We're not going to consider it as if right now, as if the father's in possession of it, and as if there's a Meiser dinner, and therefore they're not going to get Kesuvos Daf, and we don't consider it as if there's a Meiser dinner. He says, says, and this is what we quoted this before on this oven, that even if there is over there tons of metal, he left over Ferraris, he left over all these different things. He said, look, there's a Meiser dinner. No, in the club, it's nothing. Until there's real estate, more than ksuba at the value of a dinner, and only then will there be this halacha of Kesuvos Daf. Now the Gemara quotes a brisa that elaborates on these halachas. From a brisa, lezu elef lezu chamesh meis. Let's say one woman's ksuba was 1,000, another woman's ksuba was 500. Says the brisa, if there is, let's say the father died, he left over 1,500 and a dinner. Okay, they'll take 1,000, they'll take 500, and then the remaining dinner they'll divide as Yerusha. Again, we're not going to uproot a biblical nachla, they're going to equally divide that money. Now, Pshit, the Gemara says, what's obvious is the following case. Merubim. If let's say at the moment of death, had they evaluated the properties at that moment, there would have been a Meiser dinner. Then in this natu, what happened is that the prices dropped before they evaluated in courts. Real estate market dropped. And now there is no Meiser dinner. There's no extra money to have the Yerusha. Says the Gemara, doesn't make a difference. The Yershim of the bigger Ksuba already merited their mother's Ksuba at the moment of death. Of course, at that point there was a Meiser dinner. And therefore, they will get it. But the question is, what's the halacha if, let's say, at the moment of death, right before COVID, in the beginning stage of COVID, someone died, and there was only enough to pay up the ksubas, and there wouldn't have been enough for biblical Yerusha, based on the real estate, because that's where you have to look at the Meiser dinner. And then COVID hits, and everyone was busy with the burial of the father, and then prices skyrocket. So now, there is going to be a Meiser dinner. They'll divide the house, and there'll be enough past that. What's the halacha? Will that be valid to be the Meiser dinner now? So Gemara says, Tashma, let's be right from the following story. The Nichse, the Bei Bar Tzartzur. There was a story with the assets of the household of Bar Tzartzur. Mu'atim in this Rabbi. This was a story of where it was not enough, but then it increased after death before they evaluated. Also coming to Rambam, they came in front of Rambam. He said to them, Zilu Paisinu. He said, go appease the inheritors of the larger ksuba, meaning that they do take Kesuvos Daf in such a situation. And that says the Gemara, they didn't pay attention. He said to them, if you don't appease the ones of the larger ksuba, because he obviously held mu'atim in nisrabu that it does work. So if you don't appease them, and you don't give them their mother's ksuba, I'm going to hit you with a thorn that doesn't extract blood when it pokes the flesh. What does that mean? It means that I'm going to excommunicate you. So Shadrin will come to Rav Nachman. They said the Shayla of Rav Nachman. So he actually disagreed. And he actually says, no. Just like when it was a lot, and there was a Meiser, and it goes down as it continues to the base, just like over there we said, Zachem ben Yershin, that the Yershin already merited from the moment of death. So Kach Mo'atim and the Shab. The same thing is the other way too. If it's less and increases, Zochu ben Yershin, which reached Yershin, Rashi explains. The Yershin of the small Ksuba, to divide it all equally, since at the moment of death there was no Meiser, the fact that it went up later is not going to create the Meiser dinner, and if we have this machlekes regarding the halacha of Mu'atim and the Srabu, if that's going to be entitled them to Ksubas ben Yershin, it says no. Because Zochu ben Yershin of the Yershin Gitana, they're already acquired B'Shas Misav, and therefore they don't get it. Now, the Gemara till the next Mishnah, which actually takes us a little bit, the Gemara brings a simon and a manik of Elef Ameya, 1,100, Mitzvah Ksuba, Yaakov Zakav Sedaisav, Yaakov stood up his fields, and B'dvar Masikin, words of protesters. These are all cases of collection, which the first one relates us back to the halacha of our Mishnah, and that which gets us into a whole discussion regarding collections. Says the Gemara, Hahukam, there's a certain person, Avamaski Bey, that he had creditors on him for alpha zuzi, for 1,000 zuz. Now, so he had these two mansions, has one in Tom's River, one in Jackson, and Zavinu Chada B'Chamash Meir sold one for 500, B'Chada B'Chamash Meir, other one for 500. Okay, now he owes someone 1,000. So his creditor comes, goes to one of the buyers, he says, hey, hello, I'm sorry, you bought there's a lien on this property. I hope you knew that, right? This guy owes me 1,000. You bought it for 500. He collects it. Now he goes. He's on his way to the other house. I already collected half my debt. I'm on my way to collect the other one. Shakel, the buyer takes alpha zuzi. He takes 1,000 zuz because legabe, and he goes to the creditor. Normally he tells him like this: Isha bilach, if the first one is worth for you alpha zuzi, 1,000 zuz. Meaning, you're right. I bought these two houses from your creditor, and he owes you 1,000. I bought each one for 500. If you want to accept for your debt that you're owed 1,000, and you're going to consider your first house as 1,000, and you leave the second one for me, fine. Let's leave it at that. But if not, here, I'm going to give you 1,000 zuz and leave me both houses. That was the proposition that the buyer who bought these two mansions from the creditor was offering the creditor. Either consider the first house, which I bought for 500, consider as 1,000 and be done, or leave me both houses, I'll give you 1,000. So he thought to say the Hayamasni. He thought to say that this is the halacha of our Mishnah. What do you mean? That meaning you could learn out the halacha of this din that the buyer cannot make such a claim that he's going to inflate the value of the first mansion to get the creditor off of his case. Because what did the Mishnah say? Our Mishnah said, if the orphans say of the larger ksuba say how they own a mal on the for dinner, we're going to inflate our father's estate more than a dinner more, so that we can make it that the big ksubas been dinner. We said we don't listen to them. She said we don't listen of inflation of properties when it comes for someone's claims. So therefore, Rav Muhammad thought to say that no, you can't do this to the creditor. So Namli Rabbi said to me, dummy, are they comparable? It's not the same thing. How can you compare the two things? Hasam over there in the Mishnah Islub say Asmi. Fear, if you're inflating the value of the father's property, you're causing a loss to the sons of the small ksuba by inflating it. Is there a loss for the lender? No, Alpha Yav, Alpha Shakel. He gave $1,000 to the debtor, and now he's considering it's worth it for him as 1,000. He has a choice of getting $1,000 in cash, so he could either choose the mansion that was worth originally 500 now for 1,000, or $1,000. He's not losing anything. And therefore says the Gemara that the Rabbi said that shouldn't be a problem. Now, the Gemara gets us into a conversation that the tirfa b'kama kazvina. This gets a little bit complicated, as Rashi explains. This buyer, this is really like Reuben, Shimon, Levi. There's Reuben the lender, Shimon the borrower / seller, and this Levi who bought the two mansions from Shimon. This Levi, this buyer, he sold to the creditor for 1,000 zuz to placate the debt that was owed to him. Now, really what's happening is, he goes back to the courts, this lady, because he wants, remember, Levi bought this house. He's shelling out cash to the creditor, because there's a lien on the property. So I already paid for this property, I'm paying double now. So what do? I go to court, say, okay, the guy who sold it to me, you go back to him now, he owes you the money. So saying right mishtar tirfa, which is a document that when the buyer has the property collected from him, he goes back to the guy who sold it to him. That he sold him with achrayis, with insurance, that it was taken from me for a worth of 1,000 zuz. So the question is, the Gemara is asking, how much do you write in the shtar tirfa that he could go back and collect from the guy who sold it to him? Do you write 1,000, which was the amount of the debt that this house was collected for? Or for 500? Because that's how much he bought it from his seller. That's the Gemara's question of how much you write for the tirfa. So he says, the alpha, you write 1,000, which was the amount of how much it was collected for. And Rabbi says 500 amount how much he bought it for. And the Gemara says, Hilchos halacha is b'chamesh meya for 500. The reason for that is, says Taisus, is because we don't consider that like shvach, meaning it's the padna itself that was you bought that gets collected that you get compensated for. But let's say shvach that you did in it, you don't get compensated for. Here also, it's like shvach that like you made profit like 500 because that's what you placated him and he's collecting 1,000 and the 500. You don't get that, and then you're only going to get 500.
You only accept that price for 500.
Yes, the Gemara doesn't say that. Taisus doesn't say that. Taisus says like it's like shvach, meaning although you made it into 1,000, and that's what's being collected from you because you got it inflated. But just like regular shvach, if you made the property better, you're not getting, which is really your point, that because that's what you sold it for, and therefore that's what you're going to get. So you only get 500, not the 1,000. I think Gemara brings a similar type of story. Who got another person? That they were coming to collect from him 100 zuz. He had these two small fields. He sold it off. One for 50, and the other one for 50. And again, he owed someone else 100. It's really the same case. It seems like, you have to check in the Rishonim why it's saying that these two cases sound exactly the same thing. So the creditor came along, and so he collected one of them. He was coming to collect the other one. So Shokol Kuv Zuzi, so the buyer who had these two fields took 100 zuz because he was going to the creditor. He said, look, normally he said, if you consider the first small field that you took already, which is worth 50, if you consider it, let's inflate it as 100, good, we're done. We left not Shokol Kuv Zuzi, we start like take 100 zuz and then be gone. So Sabri of Yisrael Lemeiman, I understand, it's our Mishnah. You're saying, well, we said the orphans want to say that we want to inflate our father's property, and we said, oh, you're not inflate. You're also not inflate. Abai said to him, Midam is comparable. Hasam Islup said, well, he asked me. Well, there would be a loss to the assignment of the smaller Kesuba to say it. Hacham might say this, like, whatever the loss is, May Shakal, he gave 100, and he's taking 100. He says, I don't understand like the same exact case. I mean, was it a Timur coming because they have the same machlekes? And how much is the Timur that you write? Rabbi said the mayor, and the hills of 100 by 50, so you have to check in the same thing there on the bottom, or what this sounds like the same case, just one's more, one's less. Maybe you would say by less, you would say maybe differently. Like a bottom, it seems to be the same halacha. Now, a related discussion, similar, we start segueing into related ideas. Who gavra? There's a certain person that Maski ben Meir Zuzi. He owed 100 zuz. Shalchavi passed away. Shaveh Katina Da'ara. Now he left him a small piece of property. That was worth 50 zuz. Only half to him. So the creditor came and collected it. So Azal Yasmi, the orphans went, so they gave him 50 zuz, seemingly, to get back the field. So the Gedavale, he went, he collected it again. 50 and 50 is 100. So it's coming to the came from the buyer. So I'm like, yeah. And then he said, yeah. Mitzvah Yisem Lefluch Avavim. There's a mitzvah of the orphans to pay up their father's debt because of a dignity for their father that he didn't die with debts on him. It's just that the courts have no rights to force the Yisraelim to do it. Because it's not explicit mitzvah saying the Torah like Sukkah and Lulav. It's just a generic rabbinic mitzvah. So Hanukkah, by the first 50 zuz, mitzvah Disu, you did a mitzvah. Hashtag Kitarev, But now, when he's grabbing it, bedin ketarav, because the properties of the borrower are indebted to him, and therefore that's the property. So this that you went and you get this field has a shiur on it. That's not you paying up. That's a shiur. But the orphans doesn't when it's metal, they have no chiv to pay. You did yourself in. But it says the only more qualifies. But we didn't say it only the amrle. Only they didn't tell them they paid up the first time. They didn't tell them how many chamshin zuzi, these 50 zuzah demanded the arakatina. We're buying back the field. But if they told them the arakatina, this is the value of the small property, like it's like a sale, and it's not like paying up a debt, then saluke salku, then they did remove him, and then that's not considered that a right to collect from the father's property. Now, the Gemara brings Amaram, like we said, a certain person that sold his mother's ksuba. There's actually two interpretations of Rashi what this is, meaning the way Rashi first explains it is that she was married to someone else, so it's not ksubas b'din different. I mean, ksubas b'din different is only if it's his father that he's going to inherit from. She got married to another man, and she had a ksuba from that man, so his stepfather, and he sold his mother's ksuba when her husband was still alive. And he sold it b'tevus anah. What does tevus anah mean? A very small amount of money. Because it's a huge doubt, it's a risk. Because, first of all, she might die, and her husband's going to inherit her, and there's not going to be any value to it. Or even if the husband dies when the wife is still alive, the son might die when she's alive, and there never is going to come any merit to him, and therefore whoever bought it from him is not going to get anything because he wasn't his mother's shliach. So it's a huge risk. So someone was willing to, his mother had a $10 million ksuba from her husband. I'll pay you, $500,000. I'm willing to take a risk. It's a big payout. I'll take that risk. Now, but V'amalei said to the buyer like this. He said, if my mother comes along and she contests, she's not okay with what I did, I'm not going to appease you. I'm not going to give you back the monies because I'm selling it to you without any insurance whatsoever. No problem. They went ahead with it. So the mother ultimately died without ever contesting the sale that the son did of her ksuba. He came and he was contesting it, saying, look, I now take over my mother's role. And I'm going to take it. I'm not going to give you back the monies because I sold it to you without insurance. And I'm taking my mother's role of contesting this sale. So Rabbi thought to say, yes, he's taking the place of his mother. On that, Rabbi said, no. Although he didn't take the responsibility of his mother, you think he didn't take his own responsibility? That if he himself is going to contest, of course, at least then, as Rashi explains, he should give back the money. Because although that the truth is that he's backing out of the selling of the property, that's not difficult. Because a person cannot be mocking something that he didn't merit yet. As the Brisa teaches in Bava Tzidaf Design Medalev, if someone says, what I'm going to inherit from my father is sold to you, he hasn't said anything. And as Rashi points out, this is not similar to a case of someone who steals a field and he sells it. And then he subsequently buys it from the real owners, which the Gemara says over there in Bava Tzidaf Tezvav Mabeis, whatever he sold to the second person, whatever rights he's going to get, and therefore, here also, what he got from the mother should be that he's giving to the person that he had sold it to. No, because there it's specifically where he bought it from the real owners that he had stolen from, where he goes through the effort to go get it and to sell it. Where obviously it's because he wants to keep his faithfulness with the one that he originally sold it to, even though it really was stolen at that point. But if it falls for Yerusha, the Gemara says over there that Yerusha happens by itself. He didn't put in any effort to make sure that he keeps his faithfulness, and therefore he actually could back out with a sale. And he'll just give back the money. That's one version. Another version Rashi says is that this case is talking about when he sold his mother's ksuba b'teves enough, means to say the field that his father designated for his mother for a ksuba, and then the father died, and then the nechasim fall in front of this person, as long as there was no amida b'din, if he sold it, the sale is going to be valid and he cannot back out because he's a yerush and all the nechasim are in front of him. It's just that he has obligated to give the ksuba to his mother if she claims it. And on this field is where the shibud is, so she could go ahead and grab it from the lekeach and because he told this person, if a mother's going to come and katesh, I'm not going to appease you, and you lose your money, so therefore he sold it only for a small amount. But this is where this Gemara ends, is that when it's his own achrayas, and we'll see that theme later on also, that's not waste, talking about taking his mother's role, and therefore that person will get it, or at least he'll have to give him his money back. He won't say, no, you lost your money, and I'm contesting things. I don't think anything.